and well done. So this Michael Nesmith has a really good TED Talk on universal design. Okay, so there was expression or representation, so how you're teaching, and then there's engagement. So how are you involving the students in what you're teaching them and what you're showing? So some ideas there for, even for art, would be things like guided notes where they can follow along. And I don't know if you bring in high school students that, you know, that maybe you do a little more of that versus just talking to them.
So we actually just started with a packet that we're giving out to classroom teachers before they come. And we have one that's geared toward K through 3, one geared toward 4 through 8, and one 9 through 12, and it takes standards and all of that into account, but it's called Know Before You Go. And it's something where they can learn about the exhibition before they even come. They have a project they do about the exhibition before they come, and one that they do after. But then there's a page with focal things to focus on through the exhibition. So it's like they're, you know, looking at this Know Before You Go packet. It's something that's written in student language, so it's easily accessible to them. But teachers can also just print a couple of pages from it if they want to do just activities with students. So we're kind of doing that with Know Before You Go.
Yeah, for older students, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that would be an idea of a guided notes or advanced organizers where they're kind of like a story map is an advanced organizer where you have a main idea in the middle and then like the spider shoots going off, if you can picture that. That's an idea for an advanced organizer. Guided notes would be something like a blank outline where you're giving them the main points and then they fill in under that. So it's not just passive listening, they're actively engaged in doing something. They have to look for information. Another more basic one is a cloze reading, C-L-O-Z-E, where you're giving them a whole sentence, but they maybe fill in just 1 or 2 words. But they're not doing it from a bank. It's not like they have to listen and look for those missing words or ideas. Multisensory is whole body. It's arms and legs. That would be gross motor. It's sense and sights. Obviously, museums are so visual, right? And you can't touch everything. Quite the opposite, right? But how are you engaging students and allowing them to be a part of it? And that's where I was telling Erica, like the smells that she did on the food exhibit in the back last year. I was so impressed and excited. She definitely gets it. Using mnemonics to remember things. For example, Fat City. Fat is a mnemonic for frustration, anxiety, and tension. So what other, there are all kinds of mnemonics that we probably remember from learning as a kid, like the one I remember from AP Biology was Kings play chess on Fridays, generally speaking. That's the, if I actually get it right. Kingdom, phylum, class, genus. Like how would I would never ever remember that if I hadn't had that acronym or that mnemonic. Every good boy does fine.
Right.
Oh yeah.
The lines on the treble. Like which one, what do you remember?
Never eat soggy waffles.
Northeast, southwest.
Oh,
yes.
I thought it was never eat soggy wheat, so
Yeah.
Similar.
The order of planets, I've heard in a couple of different ways too. It's like something about my dear Aunt Sally.
Oh, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally is PEMDAS. It's parentheses,
That's right.
exponents. I'm not.
It's order of operations.
But yes, it's order of operations.
Yeah. So maybe we don't have them all down. But those are like so in the artwork, what could you look for? I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but but that's the idea. Like, what could you provide for students where that you really might only have a couple of students students with learning disabilities have a particularly difficult time remembering lots of information. So if you're giving them a skill and saying, okay, here's a tool, it's like you're giving somebody, a fork. It's like, here's the tool to use and remember all of this information. And then they can go off. One of my favorite things, one of my very favorite things when I'm teaching is on an exam to see, and I don't see this very often, but I have seen this, where a student, I can tell they get their exam and they immediately write down a series of letters because that's how they've remembered something. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I didn't tell them to do that. I didn't give it to them. But that's the kind of how are you remembering large amounts of information? Unfortunately, we do have to memorize things from time to time, right? So,
For me, songs always help. So
yeah.
Yeah. So just how the ABCs are put to song, A B. So when I do tours, sometimes I like making specific sounds and noises, and to remember, for example, the Kitsugi that we have, an example of, I'll go Kitsugi, and I was like, everybody say it together. Say it, Kitsugi, and then I don't know that. So I kind of use sounds or wabi sabi, whatever. So
Well, and part of that, I'm sorry, I was talking. What'd you say?
No.
I didn't mean to. No, I missed what you said.
No, I need my little chair.
She loves wabi sabi.
Yeah, no, that's what that's good. That's good. It's that kind of thing. And the other fun thing about that, and this is what I was thinking. I didn't mean to talk over you. Is not being afraid to be silly.
Yeah.
Or to make voices, or to do funny things, because that is engaging. Maybe you'd get a kid that would roll their eyes, but I bet
no, most of them
not. Yeah. And so what if they did, right? So what if they did? But that's engaging, and all of that really becomes multisensory as well, maybe without even thinking about it.
I think it breaks up tension as well, because even with a group of high schoolers, you're gonna have these slightly apathetic, students who are too cool for the museum.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna make a song and they're gonna be like, okay. But that tension is gonna release, because a lot of the time people do kind of feel uncomfortable in an environment like a museum, because either they've never been here before, or for whatever reason they've been told it's not for them, or there are all of these, things where people think it's this place where high society goes or something.
Right.
And to be able to kind of break that, and for students to be able to relax and just immerse themselves, I think things like songs and saying words in a funny way and things that make them remember also help them feel better.
Absolutely. As well as social norms are be cool and collected.
Absolutely.
And when you can let down your hair a little, let down your guard, and even if it's laughing at somebody else, or being engaged by your guide, that absolutely definitely releases tension, and that whole we don't always remember what we're taught, but we remember how you feel.
Yes.
And so that's awesome. That's a great part of it. Okay, project-based learning is also a little bit kind of to what you described with the high schoolers, where they're getting work ahead of time. But project-based learning is where the teacher is giving a very small teaching part, and then the students really have to do research and a project of their choice. So, I know the kids usually only come once, but for high schoolers, that would definitely be where they're getting the work ahead of time and seeing it, and then have to do something.
All grade levels are getting it. So we have a K through 3, a 4 through 8, and a high school. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So giving them extra time too, to process and compute. When I was on the tour, which was about an hour, I think there were 3 or 4 groups. And as I was walking around, after about 30 or 35, I think it was 45 minutes in there. At about the 30-minute mark, I could definitely see an overall energy drop. And I told Erica that, like, I don't necessarily think that means you should change it, or change the time of it, because you couldn't get to everything. But I don't know, it's something to consider, like, is it better to see less for more time and really get more out of it than trying to kind of rush and get to all the stops? I think there were 3 or 4 stops, but and that's not my call, but it was just an interesting, like, I could really see, so when energy drops, attentions drop, and the kids didn't seem to be getting that much out of it.
So what do you think then about breaking it up? So using those learning strategies like the sensory thing, or using something where maybe it's another sensory thing where people are feeling a piece of fabric that is, represented in an art piece or something like that. How do you feel if it is still 45 minutes about breaking it up and maybe having 3 or 4 activity-based things so that it's not so much just like information.
Right. Yeah, I think that would certainly be good. And there were, I think that's a great idea. I also think there were kids that were totally fine, and then there were kids that were, it just my general, like, overall. So not everybody was getting lost. One of my big suggestions for her was to have the docents with an audio, because the groups in the back with the high room, like, I couldn't hear very well.
She actually got one, maybe 2.
So if you've ever been to museums where, and I think the artwork that I had, where you're listening to an audio, have you ever gone to a museum where you have those and you're listening to a recording and you push in the number? To me, I would rather have them in both ears than one ear, right? Because I can hear better. But that's kind of the general idea. And if you think about universal design, so for small kids especially, the numbers are staggering. Like on a typical day in a first grade classroom, half the class is hearing 100% because of low grade fevers, ear infections that are not making them sick. It's just like fluid in the ears. It's a really, really high number. It might even be more than 50%. I'm not an audiologist, but like I've heard those stats sometimes. I thought, wow, this is like almost all kids. So universal design for learning in a first or second grade classroom is to have the teacher with a mic all day, every day. But that also helps the teacher because they're not shouting, right? So you get a classroom full of kids, hard floor, soft floor, doesn't really matter. But if you can have 1 or 2 speakers, then that's an amplified classroom, and that just helps everybody. So that was one of my suggestions for Erica right off the bat. Like, get some headsets. If you can get them for kids, that's also really fantastic, because if the kids are wearing them and the docent is wearing the microphone, then it's easier to drown out other sounds. Now, when I was in there with the 4th graders last year, there were no other tours going on. And so it was kind of we're moving around in tandem. I didn't think the other groups were a distraction, but parts of the room were a distraction, I thought. The
Elevated.
Yeah, it was just hard to hear. So the last group that was in there, you could tell their overall energy was kind of just, I've been standing, I've been listening for a while, and now I can barely hear. It also could have been the docent who was talking in a quiet voice because there's, which is good. It's just like nothing is bad in this scenario. It's just, okay, how could we maybe improve this for both the kids and the docent? And so that was my idea, was to so that's bringing in technology, and she's like, oh yeah, you do that. But see how that's universal design. Like for a kid that has a hearing loss, that might be in their IEP as this is a non-negotiable. The teacher has to have a microphone. But then those microphones, if it's amplified, so if someone has a cochlear implant, the microphone is going directly into the student's receiver and goes right into their own ears. But if they're wearing the kind of microphone like a cheap karaoke machine kind of microphone, You can have 1 or 2 speakers in the room and everybody benefits.
Yeah.
So same kind of general concept. And then other technology like voice to text, that could be helpful for some kids too. Expression is how you would assess what students have learned. And I know you don't really do much of that. You don't really need to do much of that, but teachers might, right? So I know Erica does a lot, and you clearly do a lot too, like what the teachers can go back to school with and follow up, or another lesson, or so those are kind of fun ways to do. Research has actually shown if you give a quiz, students pay more attention and they learn more. At the same time, it's such a pet peeve of mine. A student asked us just the other day, is this going to be on the test? No, I'm standing here for fun. Like, well, yes.
Assume it all over the test.
What? There are stupid questions, people. There really are stupid questions, and that's a stupid question to ask a teacher. The other one is, can I miss class?
Yeah, you guys don't need to come in.
Yeah.
I'm just going to talk to myself today.
So how can you kind of set it up to succeed, and where students are at least a little bit accountable for the knowledge and the information while it's still fun? One way is an exit ticket. Like, what did you learn? What do you still want to know? What are you going to go home and tell your parents? That kind of thing. And not that you would need or want to really prep students ahead of time for something like that, but to you're going to have a quiz at the end, because that can also cause a lot of pressure and stress among some students. But just the whole idea of getting some feedback, asking specific questions, and holding them a little bit at least in a fun way, in a light way for what they've walked around and learned. So this is my favorite visual. I don't know if any of you have seen this. I've seen, for a long time, I was just seeing the 2 pictures on the left. So on the far left is the idea that that's equal. Everybody is getting the same thing, an equal treatment. So everybody gets the same size box, but they don't all need the same size box. So the one in the middle is to say, okay, this is what's fair because everybody is getting what they need. The shorter guy needs 2 boxes, the taller guy doesn't need any. So that's considered what we would say is fair. Universal design, nobody needs a box, basically. Or you have maybe you have a stack of boxes on the side and then the kids go get their own box. But really, if you had a see-through fence, nobody needs a box. Nobody has to worry about the box, right? It's a little more work up front, but then it's done. It's already there. The ramp is there. Anybody can use it. And that's really, really the whole idea. All right, so we don't need to go over this too much, but I do just kind of want to reemphasize and point out there are a lot of there is some crossover. There is some crossover, and there's a time and a place to differentiate. You also might see some kids come in with certain technology or device, or and that's fine. When I was here for one of the field trips, it was great. There was one teacher who had her arms clamped, deadlocked, one kid on each arm. And she did not let them go wherever they were. She clearly knew that that's what those 2 needed, and she had them. I mean, grip, vice grip, and they were fine. They were fine. But that is, for the most part, that's differentiation, and that's fine. You can't just throw that out completely, but. And that was another thing I mentioned to Erica. Obviously, the teachers who come, they are so important. They are so important. Obviously, they know those kids, and I think that's a really key piece, that those teachers come and they're walking around in the exhibit with their students, especially for that young, the younger I would think high school maybe not so much. I don't know. Do high school teachers walk around with their students?
You know, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
But
They do.
they do.
Oh.
I think that a lot of the time it's like a liability a little bit. Like if they're not there, you know, like I'm sure they have to walk around with their students, but they probably let them out of their sight a
Yeah.
little more, you know, let them explore on their own.
So in summary, what strategies, and we could just talk about this. I don't know what time it is. Oh, it's 11 o'clock.
Yeah, we're doing good.
So comments, questions, thoughts, strategies. Like, I mean, what are there ideas that maybe popped up in your head? Like, oh, I should try this, or let's do this, or things that you maybe hadn't thought of before?
One of the things that I really liked in watching the Culture City video was they were talking about the sensory bags that have the headphones, stem balls, things like that. And I saw the Culture City like logos here for the museum. Are there those like sensory bags available like at the front desk or?
You know, I'm not sure about that. But I feel like that would be a good thing to ask about. I just looked at the Culture City last night, to be honest, with you. So I'm not exactly sure about that, but that is something I kind of wanted to talk to Erica about, kind of things that we're implementing.
And related to that, there's the logo like leading into here that says that this is like the quiet place. If someone's having a meltdown, they can be removed to the quiet place. Is that for that kind of like that lobby area, or is that for like the library? Like where exactly is the quiet place in this space?
I'm also not sure about that.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Something to check.
Yeah, that is definitely something to check out.
Has that happened to any of you? Have you had a student have a meltdown?
I've seen a nonverbal student who was here very close to their guardian who would make decisions for and communicate with them. They didn't have a meltdown or anything like that, but I have seen like, you know, a kid who sort of had that. And I have some sensory problems myself. I have meltdowns every now and then. I usually go to bathrooms to have quiet panic attacks. So like the Culture City thing with those quiet spaces, those kind of designated things was really interesting to me. Yeah, and they had I guess like a website where you can go on there and get a sense of like what you can expect before you go someplace to experience something, and that kind of being able to have a sense of the layout before you go is really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a really helpful thing for anyone also, and that's the thing with universal design, I think that's so important is you do have these things that can help everyone. For example, I know when I was teaching in the classroom, we had a student who had a very, very, very strict schedule that they had to stick to. And they had a chart that they used for themselves for the schedule. And one of the things that they did was they gave cues to the rest of the class. The teacher who I was in for, because I was a long-term sub, had them in their class give these cues for every single time because it helped to them remember, but also the rest of the class was so grateful, you know, to have those scheduled reminders, especially in an art class, because they would be like 10 minutes left, and then everybody would be like, oh, thank you so much, like I was engrossed in this. So I think even things like that here, like being able to go online, see the layout, you know what you're getting into before you go, I think could help anyone, especially, you know, if you've never been to a museum or something like that, it could maybe help you feel more comfortable. And Daniel works on a virtual tour of our permanent collection gallery. I don't know if any of you have been on the Museum to Go part on the website, but there's a virtual tour where you can actually go through the entire permanent collection gallery and see what's on view, but you can actually see the whole layout of the space, all the pictures and stuff before you even come.
Yeah, it's even on the main website, because there's a special museum to go section that has PowerPoints and PDFs for teachers, and then we have public section right there on the website where you can just go to view the museum and then explore the museum and then go to virtual tours right there on the main part of the website, and then that's the public version without the PDFs and whatnot, but still you can see all the most of the past tours,
Mhm.
and then explore them virtually. So
That's
Is that-
neat. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's also an awesome classroom resource, but it's great for students to be able to see it, and any teacher can use it. And I know we like send it out to teachers and stuff like, check out our virtual tours. And there's like a resource packet where the teachers can know about all of the things that are happening in the exhibit, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, the whole sensory bag or a sensory room. I remember seeing the queue now during Cavs games, and I don't know if it's other events too, I would assume so. They have a sensory room that people can use or access. It's not like an individual needs an ID bracelet that says, I have sensory issues or I'm autistic to use the room, right? It's there for whoever needs it. So, and I don't know what kind of restrictions there are or not, but that's exactly the point. So if you need it, it's there for you. Pretty cool.
Something I thought about when you were talking, so you said like, did we have any ideas? I've been teaching some of the arts experience workshops after classes go on tours, or like I'm doing a scouts group and we have to talk about the principles of design, and I'm pulling pieces from the current exhibits to show them, like these are the pieces that have these certain elements of design in them. But I was thinking about maybe including a feedback piece in that arts experience workshop and kind of using that, because I think we could really use that for museum data, but also because that might help the students kind of put into words what they learned.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when you put it into words on the paper, like it's really helpful. Like I don't know, when I study, I have to write notes the entire time. Otherwise, I don't commit it to memory. And everybody has different learning strategies, but
So what's an example of what this feedback piece looks like?
maybe just like an exit ticket, like what do you still want to know after visiting the museum? What did you learn today? Tell me, one fun fact about an artist. Just something. I mean, it would be...
No, I think that would be cool too, and especially in that format, like just 3 quick questions.
Yeah, because then it also takes the pressure off students. They don't feel like they're taking a test, but they're able to, 3 quick questions. It takes less than 5 minutes.
Right, and you call
out
it
the door.
You call it a feedback thing.
Yeah.
If you want to incorporate another element, you could have an iPad or 2, and they can either write their answers or they can record their answers.
Oh, I like that.
That's a good idea.
I like that.
That really adds an additional universal design element for the kids who maybe are better speakers than writers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
Or
like that a lot. I like video.
Yeah, I was in a museum where there were little booths at various places. This was the Smithsonian in DC, and you could go in and shut the door and press a button and record how you were taking it all in. It was pretty cool.
That is really cool.
It was really cool. I saw 2 of them, and it was like a little sound booth.
That's kind of
It was
special
really
too, because then you could even have another component. Obviously, CMA is really small. We'd have to do something like that small scale. But it could be really exciting to maybe have people record their thoughts verbally and then have that even be another component of the exhibition.
Exactly. And so what they had at this one was I don't know how many hundreds of ones they're choosing from, but they had a wall then where you could stand and listen to people's comments.
That's awesome.
I love that.
And so, yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
It was cool.
I have to wonder if they did that just orally, if it was just the voice recording, or if they did that visually as well. Because I know some people tend to be kind of paranoid about anonymity and their faces.
Well, I was thinking audio for here. I was thinking just audio.
Yeah.
This was a Smithsonian. This is like DC scale, so this was very large. But your I could see myself. So the camera, it was like an eye camera, and then I'm basically looking in a mirror talking to myself. So you could see what would be shown, but I think the point was more if you have something to say and you want to kind of process it.
It's really voluntary. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
interesting.
And you could delete it.
Oh.
So it was one of those, you could record it and then watch it and then delete it, re-record.
Right.
It was neat. It was at the new Smithsonian of African American History, which I would highly recommend. And Smithsonian's are all free.
Yeah.
With that one, you have to get on early and get a time slot if you're there, especially the weekends. But I was there in September, and it was not hard.
You said DC?
Do they have a lot of time slots for most of the Smithsonian's, or is it just like that one in particular?
That's the only one that I know of that is even doing that, because it's new.
So,
I think it's only been open for a couple of years, and there's just so many people passing through.
Okay. I'm actually going to DC later this year. Well, I have a friend in Arlington, and we're going to hit up some Smithsonian's.
I would put that one at the top of your list. You can only make those, they're free, and you can only do it the day of. But it depends, if you're there during the week, like I went on a Friday, I was there for a conference, I went Friday afternoon when I was finished with my meetings to just kind of scope it out, and then my daughter and her husband came, and we went together Saturday, and that's when I wanted to make sure we had a time.